Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm having some issues with the sound here. It seems to be the Mac itself. Can you hear me all right? It's strange. My word, I don't know what to make of that, but that's very odd. It seems to be working on here, but I can't hear anything now coming out of this. This Johnny-come-lately mic, so I don't know what to make of that, in truth. Can you hear me all right? Chaps and chopesses. It would seem to you can, because it's coming out on there. How strange is that? I can't hear anything coming out of here. Oh, well, never mind. As long as you can hear it, that's got to be good. Well, what have we just had in Australia? A very strange event indeed, I have to say. We're supposed to believe that 12 people have been shot dead. Yet, from the actual video of the Australian guy, presumed, who actually tackled one of the shooters, that's a very strange situation in that the guy who he took the weapon off didn't run as you'd expect him to run, while the guy who just took it off him has a gun. Suggests to me that the guy who had it taken off him knew that they were blanks. You've got the other two guys very close by on the top of the stairwell, neither of which shot the guy who took the gun off the Aussie. Interesting. That just doesn't fit for me. I mean, if that had been me that took the weapon off the guy, I'd have shot him in the legs. I wouldn't have wanted to kill him. I'd have just shot him in the legs and incapacitated him with immediate effect. And then I'd have been at them two on the steps. So that doesn't seem right at all from any perspective that you can imagine. And then I've just seen, before I came on, it's interesting images showing a Muslim attacking the guy who took the gun off the gunman. Again, that doesn't make sense either, because they're portraying that as this is the guy that took the gun off the shooter, when clearly the guy in the white shirt wasn't the shooter. So that would suggest to me that's a psyop in and of itself. That is just so weird. Nothing at all about that event makes sense whatsoever. I have to say. So yeah, I'm not having that. And that's just from the get-go. What that is with the Muslim apparently taking it off, it looks to me like that's been photoshopped for sure. It's been created. But it's new, it's fresh. We're going to have to wait to see how it rolls. But nothing there at all looks right, in my opinion. In fact, it's probably looking like the worst psyop, short of London Bridge knife thingy, where the guy who died got up and walked away again, that I've seen. It's pathetic. I've never seen anything like it. I hope the Aussies have seen that. Very interesting that, indeed. And you've got Fat Fingers giving it the big, oh, we're so sorry, me and me Molly. Me and my Molly are so sad. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, of course you are, pal. Of course you or, Charlie boy. I don't think you care, to be quite honest. In fact, if anything, you care that it didn't work. Because surely that isn't going to work. I've never seen such nonsense in my life. It was utter shit. So I don't know what you think about that, but as I said, it's early days. Let's see how they roll it out. But honestly, they're just so pathetic now. It's ridiculous. Or are people just now starting to get a grip here? And well done, that guy that took the rifle off him. Absolutely. Or shotgun, whatever it were. Couldn't really see that clear. But well done to that fella, is what I would say. More of that is required from white males before they move to conscript you. Because they're terrifying everybody now with this Putin shite. And I've said this before. The plan that was set up here 10, 12 years ago was that they have to militarise the nations. And Russia, of course, is serving that agenda very well. It's got its nuclear subs all surrounding the British Isles. He's given us 23 targets. Legitimate targets, you would say, in a war. And again, they're just trying to up the military idea, get the mindset going, talking up the big, we're going to have to conscript. They've sent the paras into Ukraine. Now, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. We've had this week a so-called tribute to a para, a Lance Corporal, who's died in the Ukraine. It doesn't look like he were carrying out any action, but he's died all the same. And, of course, I've been on the Forces News all week, on all these Forces threads, just pointing out the fact that it's not so much a tribute that's being thrown about everywhere by MPs and every talking head you can imagine. It's more telegraphing the fact that the British forces are in play in the Ukraine. And that is exactly what they're doing. And they've just sent a battalion of paras over to the Ukraine. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, because why are our boys being wasted in a shit show to give these Ashkenazi Second Temple priesthood their original homeland back? It's ridiculous that actually this is going on. You know, them paras over there, what you need to do is start shooting commanders of your regiment and every other regiment that's in there playing for Ukraine. That's how I'd see it. Just think First World War. That's all you need to remember. The commanders have not changed. It's the same bloodlines running the commanders, which we're going to look at tonight. We're going to look, because there's a guy in Scotland, or a female, I don't know who it is, it's coming across as a non, who has presented a lot of data from the archives relative to what I've been talking about for years now, and the fact that the British Isles have been run by the Scottish bloodlines since James I. Okay? At elite level, and it took a long time for them to subdue the populations. Now we have real evidence from the records and archives, both in Scotland and in London. So I've presented this Chapess's work on the website because it has value. And we're going to look at that today, because you know I've been papping on about this for a long time. I know many of you probably think, oh, he's just, what's he on about? He's a nut job. No, I'm not a nut job. You know, when I talk about a subject matter like that, if it's suggested, then I'll tell you it's suggested. If it's my opinion, I'll tell you it's my opinion. But if it's based on real data, historical data that you don't necessarily get in the books, or you get it in such a way that you don't connect the dots of it, then I'll tell you it's fact. And I've been saying it's a fact that England, and even indeed Ireland, has been run by the Scottish elites, who aren't even Scottish. Okay, they were all pulled in to Scotland under David I. And we're going to go through that. But also I've added the data that I've got in context in relation to the more sort of esoteric side of this game, which I've been presenting for good knows how long on these live streams. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. I don't know whether we'll get through it all, but the amount of data that's coming out from this guy, because he's using AI, which is sensible. There are a couple of points in there that I can't agree with, and that is the idea that England has never actually been a sovereign nation. But he's presented it, or she, and we will put it out there because, of course, we're not afraid to put out information, whether we agree with it or not. We will always come back to analyse it a little bit more if need be. But the idea that there's no English constitution is just a little bit ridiculous, in my opinion, because what was known and is known is that the constitution that was built even before 1066 was actually agreed to be the Angevins or conquerors. Shitbags did actually agree to be governed by that constitution. So there are a few points I wouldn't agree with, but it doesn't matter. On and for the record is the data that this chap has presented, and therefore it needs to be known. Now, I put the first part of this data up on the website maybe 2 weeks ago, and this week I would suggest some unhappy, unhinged Aggie Squeezer shagass has been trying to hack the daylights out of my old website in Switzerland. Of course, Swiss being the Swiss, they stopped it. And of course, it's they tried hard, let's put it that way. So it had to be somebody that knew what they were doing, and it does seem to be coming on the back of the Aggie Squeezer expose in this data collection, which is great because it really does show that this machine that they've created to subdue mankind, which it will because they're controlling the filters, at this particular stage, while they run around trying to close the loopholes that we're all finding, because that's what they're doing, he's giving out some pretty good data they probably wouldn't want out there. So well done to AI for that, but more importantly, well done to the man, male or female, who has took it upon themselves as a Scot to show that what little old life in the mix has been talking about for quite a few years isn't based in some hoo-ha fancy. It's real data, because that's what's been happening. And it goes into great detail. You'll be quite surprised. The British East India Company, a Scottish gig. Yeah, all the English have been hit for so long with blame for this nonsense. It's quite ridiculous. Just because the HQ of the East Indies, the Venetian bankers, may base in the inner city of London, which is a sovereign state. It's nothing to do with England. It's nothing to do with London. Albeit it today acts as the crown in the UK corporation. So we will take a look at that. But just back to this Australian thing. What utter nonsense that's coming out of this now. It really is nonsense. It's so pathetic. I'm quite interested to see how the Australians actually go with this, because I'm sure they're not going to take this as real. So we'll have to wait and see, of course, as it rolls out, and let's see what lies and spin they put on it. But just before I came on, that particular image came up where they're suggesting a Muslim stopped the gunman, which is clearly the guy that actually took the weapon off the real gunman. So what's that all about? What? I mean, if nothing else, it just creates even more division. Because I think what they're more afraid of now, the Second Temple priesthood, is the idea that especially the British Isles, is that the Muslims and the natives, the white natives, actually start to realise we're in the same boat here, and that actually this system that's screwing us, it's sort of psychological operation, that it's actually individual religions playing out this game. I think people are starting to realise that actually this one particular force, this priesthood from the Second Temple, is controlling all the theologies, and therefore is also the beneficiary to all the energies and cash and monies and actions, etc., that go on, whether you're a Torah Jew, whether you're a Christian, or whether indeed you're a Muslim. Because at the top of all these institutions is banking. It's just banking. That's all it is. And it can only work, this control mechanism over the three religions, if people believe garbage. You know, belief is so easily manipulated because you believe in somebody else. And so if you believe in somebody else, that somebody else has got control over your mind. If you've got control over your mind, you've got control over your actions. That's not just actions that you might carry out in respect of your religion, but more importantly, actions such as where you're spending money, what you're spending money on, etc. It's just so massive, but I think people are starting to awaken to the fact that it's a Second Temple priesthood, and they are an imperial force heralding from Persia, but they've been over across in the West now for centuries. So let's not sit down and say, oh, well, it's all Iran. No, the people that live in Iran today are so far removed from the people that we're speaking about. We have to take that on board. In fact, as the people that we're talking about moved into the East, into the West, they kept those areas, backward like 1,000 years. In the same way, the Chinese were kept enclosed away from technological advancement for centuries in order they could do what they've been doing in the last 100 years and raise it up when it serves their purpose. You know, we really need to start to realize all peoples, regardless of your culture, is what you were given. Your religious belief is what you were given. And the sooner people start to recognize that all these forces, all these theologies rather, were given to you by the same priesthood. And therefore they control all. And that can only take place while you still operate on belief. It's belief that's the problem. You know, it's that not taking responsibility for your own life. In the same way, people not taking responsibility for their own health were suckered in 2020. That is the reality of the situation today of man, or the human. And it's... So I've been watching reruns of stuff like... I've watched Game of Thrones earlier in the year. I've watched Last Kingdom again. And so lately I've been watching... You know, remember the Vikings? The latest Vikings with... Ragnar, you've got Rollo, you've got Ivan the Boneless, all those characters. I think 2013 that came out. And in all of these particular things that I've watched this year, I've been so angry at the fact that the programming is so embedded. You've got Vikings in the 7th century or 8th century using the term human, using the term person. It's so fucking ridiculous. But this programming is fucking huge. It's in every single thing that's come out on Netflix. Why? Because you look at the producers, you look at the writers, you look at the directors. They're all Second Temple asswipes. The lot of them. They're playing with history, falsifying it. Now, with Last Kingdom, we know that it was an amalgamation because it was made so in the books that were the forerunner for it. And we know that they've just amalgamated a lot of characters and such that were known to be around in those times. But these Vikings, it's ludicrous. Ludicrous, the language that they're using. Child, they're even using that. But it's so Semitic. You know, for us older generations, or especially us that have been studying this law and language, etc., we can see the absurdity of it. But to the younger generations that don't know their ass from their elbow, what does it send as a message? It's saying, well, this human person, child, it's ancient. And it's not. It's very, very recent. All pulling everybody into this no high trust. So I've been, even though I've enjoyed but of course I stopped watching the Vikings originally as soon as Ragnar had gone because it just turned into a cesspit of piss. I think we're on the 6th season, and the feel of it is just utter shit. It doesn't feel anything like the intensity that you had when Ragnar would do. I think it's probably because Ragnar is said to be a real character of its day. I mean, I've studied a lot of that stuff, and even that there's still the suggestions that actually it was just a mythical kind of thing. But ultimately, these are important things because as we'll go through tonight with this it's being suggested from the records that actually we've been under Danelaw for forever, and no matter what these Angevins tried to do, they were all operating under Danelaw. So again, I said there's some things I don't agree with, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're incorrect. It just means maybe I haven't analysed those aspects of things thoroughly enough to say yea or nay. But it's the interesting part of it is here now we're going to have the evidence from the record, from the archives, both in Scotland and in London, that what I've been papping on about now for quite a few years is a point of fact. So we'll have a look who's joined us, and then, without further ado, we will crack on. All right, let's have a look. It's looking a lot like Christmas. Do you like my tree? Hey, look at that. Isn't it gorgeous? It's a lovely thing. I mean, it's not actually for Christmas. It's not a Christmas thing. But I just thought, yeah, let's crack on. Because I've got my Christmas tree up there, of course, downstairs. Looking bloody lovely, I have to say. We can have a look at that if you want. I've got it up on the old face ache. Where are we? Let's have a look. Oh, I've been playing. Right, where are we? So, yeah, I mean, there's the video, let's just say. Have I got it on browser? I need to just check this because I am rubbish at that. And I haven't. Sorry, chaps. So if you just watch this video, clearly the guy in the white is the guy taking the weapon off. But then he's not shooting him. I'd have shot the bastard. In his legs. I'd have shot both his legs. Probably his knees to wreck him so he couldn't do it again. Now, this guy doesn't look like he's that terrified, which, had that been a loaded rifle, you would be shitting yourself and you'd have been off like a shot. You'd have been behind these bins as a natural reaction. He's put a gun down, and then you get to see two more marksmen just a little bit further over here. Now, that's a different fella than the guy that took the weapon off him. And you've got two guys here. Now, they would have shot that guy that were taking the weapon off him immediately that he came away from the perpetrator, but they didn't. Why? Because I'm quite convinced that they're shooting blanks. Or they're proper shit. They're not very good terrorists. And whoever's paying them needs to be looked at. And, I mean, it's difficult to work out who they are, what they are, but they look a little bit too white for my liking, but they're, you know, it's like, you can't tell, can you? So let's not go down that path, but that guy clearly took the weapon off them, and I've seen some just before I came on where it's showing a Muslim taking the weapon off him. That's took it off him. I mean, it's the biggest shit show that I've seen of these psyops. It's so pathetic. And I'll just show you my Christmas tree. There's my Christmas tree. Looking groovy. Smelling groovy as well. You can't beat the smell of pine in the living room for Christmas. It just does smell gorgeous, especially when you go in first thing in the morning. So there's my lovely Christmas tree. Now, where were we? We weren't there. Oh, sugar. I've lost where we were. Oh, no, that could be fun. It's not there either. No, it's not there. Oh, bugger. Oh, sugar. Right, I've got this right up now. I don't even know where we were. I could have sworn I put it close. No, it's not there. 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 Oh, it's over here, I think. Let me have a look. There we go. Yep, okay. So, Scotland controlling the British Isles since James the 1st. And now that you've seen the headline, I can put back me, so you can see like a little me. Alright, so there we are. That's what we're going to go through tonight. Now, who's joined us? That's what I'm doing, isn't it? PY Music says good evening. Mew says it's looking a little bit like Christmas evening. Mew, it certainly is, and it's feeling like it as well. Good evening, says PY evening Paul. Kerry says, "I and love from Ireland. Evening, Sam." Slipknot says, "Alright, Sean, alright, everyone. Evening, Slipknot." How did you know they were acting on the 8th of the 2nd? And I'm going brothel. You did? How did you know that? Are you one of them sidekicks? Slipknot? No, I don't know. Mew says, "Just one mod short of a full deck." No, the other one's not going to be coming back. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so let's get that. We're down to 2. So you're going to have to work harder. And that's it. That's all I can say. June says, "Good evening, Sean and chat." Evening, June. I can't keep laying back like I'm having a chill time because I can't see the bloody stuff. EAOOO. What? EAOOO. You want to check that one out, Mew? Hello, Earthlings. Well, hello to you. Pedram says, "Good evening from Iran Republic. Regime change in progress." Really? What do you mean? Is that to the benefit of you guys, or are they up to no good? Evening, Pedram. The Realist 649 says, clapping hands. Hello, the Realist. Good evening to you. Kerry gives it the thumbs up. No worries, mate. David Coyle says, "I thought George Michael had taken over for..." What do you think? What do you think of the old fuzzy face? I've joined the fuzzy face club for a bit. What do you reckon? George Michael. I've never been called that before. I mean, I've grown goatees in past, and they annoy me. And this is annoying the shit out of me at the moment, but it's just a bit spiky. It's like having a wire brush sticking out your face. But I'm persevering. Because I'm told that it makes me look sophisticated. And I have to say, the attention I'm getting off flosses out there, I quite like it. It's quite ridiculous that all you need to do is have a bit of fuzz on your face, and the girl is just swooning at your feet. So I'm having a bit of a revisit to 80s, 90s kind of vibe on a personal level. And I thought, well, you just better persevere, son, because, well, yeah. So thanks for that. I am looking a bit fuzzy-faced and George Michael-ish. Well, that's fair enough. So I thought I'd give it a bash. Well, there you go. What does it look like? Are we happy with it, or do I look like a twat? You know, answers on a postcard too. So thanks, David, for that, and good evening. Slipknot says another psyop. You're damn right it is. It's garbage. Utter shit, though, if you think about it. Wait till you see what they're putting up now with this Muslim so-called taking the gun off the guy that took the gun off the perpetrator. It's division is what they're trying to create everywhere. It's quite ridiculous, to be honest. Weefy says, "Evening all, evening Weefy man." Pedram says, "Infowar just reported a fruit shop owner, Hamid Al-Hamed, disarmed the one attacker but did not know how to reload the rifle, so he gave up as he's been shot by the other attacker on bridge." Okay. Well, wait, what? That guy in a white shirt weren't called Ahmed Al-Ahmed, I'm quite positive. But again, no, it's early days, let's wait and see. Thanks for that, Pedram. The man survived and received surgical treatment, it's been suggested. Thanks for that. The whole scenery looked like a Netanyahu setup to stay in power, and surely the Abraham Empire infighting continues. And yeah, and of course, is it some kind of special celebration? I've also noted this week that the Jews in Manchester have been protesting the fact that Jews in Israel are forced to join the IDF, which is good, because, you know, as I've said before, you know, I do breed these subjects, and I understand that it's going to piss people off. Yeah, I've pissed Muslims off, I've pissed Jews off, I've pissed Christians off. But I don't really give a shit, for the simple fact is, if they're pissed off, they're not actually listening to what I'm saying. Because what I'm saying is this. While you believe in the pish, then this one particular priesthood is controlling you. And that particular priesthood took control way back in the midst of time. And that's pretty much where we're at. And so you can be pissed off all day. I don't really care. But I know the only people that are pissed off are the people that are making money out of these particular religions. If they were actually religious and serious about their doctrine, surely by now you are starting to see that I'm actually on all sides except the pish, the tossers, the bloodlines at the top that have blagged the earth for thousands of years. That's as the enemy, not you on the street, going about your business, looking after your family, and trying to earn a quid. I'm not your enemy. But if you want to see me as that, catch on, because now I look like George Michael, and I might burst into song at any moment. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, there we go. Well, it's surgical treatment. Yeah, so you wouldn't be surprising. And Netanyahu is crying his eyes out at the moment. Well, he's Milikowski. Ben Zion is called Milikowski. That's his name. His father was Polish. His grandfather was Russian. So he has absolutely no claim to the Holy Land whatsoever. So keep that in mind, chaps. None of the controllers of Israel are from the Middle East. They're all from Russia, or have come through Russia. So that's the Second Temple priesthood coming from the back end, but from the Bolshevik takeover, that's where they all amalgamated. And I'm looking at Norman Finkelstein. I've followed his work on Facebook at the moment, and how Norman there is getting a little bit excited. He's starting to sound a bit like Abe Finkelstein. I don't know what AI is going to do on that one, because AI were very clever and trying its best when Lee were trying to open up certain data in relation to Finkelstein's work, Abe's work. AI was very, very pushy on keep flipping to Norman. Well, what you're going to do now, AI, Norman is acting in the same manner as Abe by telling the truth. So well done, Norman Finkelstein. I'm very impressed with your work at the moment, because you're actually operating for your people, the Torah Jews, the followers of the Mosaic Law. So well done. It looks like there's a lot of interesting characters now coming out and fighting for their own people in the right way, because we all have a recognition now that the shit show that runs all of them is in fact a shit show. So that's got to be good news. We're getting good stuff going on everywhere. Paul says, evening Sean and fellow inmates. Evening, Paul. John of the Family Smith. Lots of crisis actors in Australia. Well, yeah, I would agree with that. Also, I know I've had a lot of emails of late, and I do apologise, but I've just been so busy with my own reversion data stuff, because that's coming together very well now, very nicely indeed. So I've just been so busy, I do apologise. I have tried, and but I know there's probably some I've missed. But I haven't missed you, you're still there. I will get through my emails, and I will get back to you, so just bear with me. I'm not ignoring anybody. Good evening, John. Weaverman says that they've overmixed the pot considerably, because I think they're panicking quite a bit, because they're trying to get people masked up. That's not working. It's not working at all, is it? So they're forcing people in the hospitals to wear a mask. Not that it bothers me, because I don't visit them places. I'd have to have my leg chopped off before I went and visited one of them places. And even then, I might go and find a witch doctor. Treen's there. Hey, Treen, me old Chan, you're going to like this one tonight, darling. I shot at all the crews. Sorry I'm late. It's not a problem, Treen. We're just glad you're here, and I believe you've been poorly. I hope you're very well, and you need to stop smoking them fags. Or Pueblo. I've told you before, Pueblo's clean. Or cleaner. So you can get cancer the healthy way. I know it's stronger, but you get more nicotine. And more nicotine means it's regulating your blood sugar. I mean, if you thought about it, they're attacking raw milk, which has GC MAF in it, which has one job, which is keeps cancer under control. And they are doing everything they can to ensure everybody has diabetes due to the shit that's in the food. And in order to do that, they need to stop nicotine. Nicotine is the greatest blood sugar regulator there is on this earth. Yeah, so if you've got type 1 diabetes, start smoking fags. And that'll regulate your blood sugars. You'll be fine. Don't start your medication until you've started up fags, of course. But no, you're not going to do that. Everybody's crying to death smoking. it's a lurgy, you're not allowed to do it, it's disgusting. Well, I say, kiss my ass. I've been smoking since I was 9. I've given up twice, healed my lungs, and I've been happily smoking since, because I do enjoy a fag. And what would I do with my hands if I didn't have to roll a fag? So that's my advice. If you've got diabetes, start smoking fags or tobacco and grow your own. And it's even, in fact, to be honest, you would be better starting on the cigars, especially the tiny little ones, the Tom Thumbs. They are just loaded with nicotine because they don't seem to affect cigars because, of course, the hoity toits like a cigar, so they're not going to damage their own. Where are we here? So, welcome, Treen. Good to see you. Imagine that says false flag. I agree. Imagine that, and welcome. John of the family Smith says it looks like they were firing blanks. Yeah, I have to say. I mean, if you got the bollocks, like the fella obviously had to go and get that gun off the guy, you'd have shot him, wouldn't you? Let's be honest. I mean, they might have done something daft and shot him in the head, but me, I'd have shot him in knees, or legs at least, just to decapitate and make sure he couldn't do this again. But the perpetrator didn't run off frightened enough. The fact that somebody, a civilian, had just taken his weapon away quite easily. You'd have run straight away. Your instinct would have been to run behind them bins with immediate effect. But more importantly, the two guys, less than 50 yards away up on the stairs, the minute the perpetrator got away from the guy who took it off him, would have shot him. If that were a real military operation. So yeah, it's utter shit, and it's probably the worst that they've actually done, in my opinion. At least in a lot of these cases, it takes a few days or even a week or so before we start to see it undo. But yeah, not having it. So I agree with that one. Imagine that. And John, Tree says, great tree show. Mine's still in the cupboard. Get that tree out. Stop being what do they call it? What do they call it? Humbug. Stop being humbug, Treen. Get the tree out and celebrate the jolly rebirth of the Christ within you on the 25th of December. Never mind the garbage out there, because Father Christmas is an invention. We're going to go in that on the Christmas live stream, which will be... Oh, it's Christmas Day is a Thursday, isn't it? Oh, is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we might have to do it the Sunday before the Christmas, probably to... Yeah, because it'd be a bit silly doing it after, wouldn't it? Right, so that's... I've just worked that out now. We'll do the Christmas special before Christmas Day. It's quite a few days before, isn't it? It's a bit naughty, that. Unless I do a Christmas Eve. But then everybody wants to play out on Christmas Eve. Or would you like me to do a Christmas Eve live? Maybe we'll do that. Let me know what you think, because if you're all busy, it's pointless. So, Treen. Yeah, good that you're here anyway, Chuck. And get your tree out. Stop being naughty. Joe Todd says, did you notice the striped pyjamas? No, I didn't, actually. Is there any recoil from when the man is shooting? I don't know. There is a bit of a recoil when you can use blanks, because you've still got a charge in it. You've just got nothing coming out. But I didn't notice that either, Mew. It's only been today that I had because the first one that came out was just all the people running off Bonsai Beach. Then in the afternoon, we got the one where this guy took over the thing. And then, as I said, just before I came on, there's this nonsense one. I've only just seen. So I'll have to get back to it over the week and just see what the crack is. So I don't know. You are very naughty, Treen. Get the tree out. Do a Christmas Eve live, please, Sean, says Paul. Do you think that's what we should do, chaps? I think that might be a good idea. We don't have to keep you. I don't have to keep your attention for 2 hours. But I do have an idea of what I'd like to do for Christmas Eve, and it might just be an hour gig. So, all right, if that's what you think we should do, then I would be happy to oblige. No kickback from the blanks. Well, no. I'll have to look at it again, Mute, just to be absolutely positive about it. But it's just utter rhubarb, is what I would say. Right, we need to make this a little bit bigger, so they can see it. So they can see. They can see what they're seeing. Okay. I can make that a little bit bigger even. I think, well, like, actually, I can't. I can if I do this. There we go. It's a little bit better, isn't it? And we just centralise that. So, this is a recent put together, and as I said, it's upset that I get Squeezer Elite because they've been trying to hack my website. Ha 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 ha. It didn't work. The Swiss are fantastic, regardless of what others might think. The Swiss people are no different than us. Their elites are just as bad as our elites, and that's what people need to start to recognise. And then we get somewhere. Tree says, it's so performative and staged, I won't even watch it. Same old, same old. But it will be interesting to see how it went down in old Australia, I have to say. Right, onward we go. So, now I've added this as a recent thing because I've been adding stuff to it today, ready for tonight. But before we enter this factual representation of history, we must consider what was achieved in Scotland under David I. David I of Scotland, who reigned from 1124 to 1153, deliberately brought in Anglo-Norman, Breton and Flemish aristocrats, many of whom came via northern France and Flanders, which is modern Belgium, to reshape Scotland's nobility and feudal system. This came on the back of the importation of Solomon Templars, in direct opposition to the Christian Templars of the Franks, Saxons and English, by Robert the Bruce, to oppose Edward I. So Bruce brought in these Solomon Templars to oppose Edward I, who was a seriously Christian king. He didn't have a choice. His wife made him. Okay, because he does get a bad press, does Eddie? From this data, we can verify the fact the Second Temple priesthood, a Babylonian imperial group, sent into the Levant to secure control over the tribes following the Mosaic Law, or Old Testament, to ensure Babylon became the beneficiaries to the Middle East trading centre, because that's what the Middle East is. It's a pivot point of trade between Africa, Asia and Europe. Okay, and the Persians wanted to control it. The priesthood used what Yeshua called the laws of man, or as we know them today, the laws of Talmud. I've spelt that wrong. Or Zohar, which was formed in the Midrash while in captivity in Babylon. So the Midrash is the scribble in which they've installed the Talmud and the Zohar system, but based entirely for the priesthood. This is the inner circle game. And then they had to thrust it on those who were following the Old Testament, or the outer circle game that were living in the Levant. Now, we've just defined a Midrash. Midrash is a vast body of ancient Jewish interpretive literature and the rabbinic method, studying Hebrew Bible by seeking deeper hidden meanings beyond literal text. Oh, yeah, of course they are. It involves storytelling, legal analysis, wordplay, allegories used to explain gaps, fill in details, apply scripture life, forming a core part tradition alongside Talmud. So it's got nothing to do with the Bible. It's all about incorporating the Talmud in so that the tribes that followed the Mosaic law of the day didn't shift and follow the teaching of Yeshua. With the claim that the body of law administered by the priesthood to be a secret oral law given by Moses gave the same absolute control over the Mosaic law without enlightening the tribes to the fact. This is a classic inner circle, outer circle method of controlling a belief system, allowing the inner circle to act contrary to the outer circle's paradigm. After the destruction of the temple in 70 AD by the Church of Rome, which was Pauline in its theology, and in line with the canon formed by Marcion, the Second Temple priesthood met in a series of conclaves from 90 to 100 AD in an attempt to regain power over the tribes who were fast joining the new gospel and teaching given by Yeshua, an initiate of the Albion Druids, who sent him back to the Levant to block the wholesale takeover of the pivotal centre of trade between Africa, Europe and Asia by the Empire of Persia. In following the teaching of Yeshua, it did show the path to personal transformation without the need for any external entity, specifically the enslavement system renowned of the Near East, which is Babylon. After failure to regain control over the tribes, the priesthood determined to take over Rome, the success of which plays out on Albion, as the Carthaginians moved to destroy the source of the new creed, the Albion Druids. The success then expressed itself in the formation of a new creed based around the teaching of Yeshua, and the emergence of a new church assigned to the Eastern Rome, which through Constantine, the Church of Peter, and of course remember it was formed in Constantinople. This church demanded absolute obedience to an entity outside the self and inverted the teaching of Yeshua and the Albion Druids. So basically, if you follow Jesus, which is what he said do, not fucking worship me, you will find the path to personal transformation of who you are. But there's a lot of rules and regulations in there that people can't follow because they like being assholes. Well, okay, that's fine. After the exit of Rome from Albion, many centuries of power struggles commenced on Albion. After King Offa, who was the only monarch to refuse subjection to Charlemagne, he actually acted on equal terms with Charlemagne. The only monarch in the entire European landmass on Albion who wouldn't bend the knee to Charlemagne. Yet they still did deals together. The monarch to refuse subjection to Charlemagne, Albion became subject to the new Rome through Alfred, who opposed the wholesale takeover of Danelaw. This failed until Crusade. Now, again, I'm not so sure that the original church at Alfred's time was under the Church of Peter, because there's a serious distinction between Western Rome and Eastern Rome. Okay, the Western Rome were classed as the Arians. In fact, the term Catholic was actually an Eastern Roman term. It wasn't a Western Roman term at all. And so I'm still not 100% sure that the Church of Peter was what ended up creating and forming England, in truth. Anyway, but of course Alfred only pulled in laws that were already existent here, so he didn't create the laws. They just acknowledged, accepted them, and made them more valid. This failed until Crusade was declared, and the ability to amalgamate the warriors of Europe into the hands of the Church of Peter commenced. So in creating these crusades, then the powers that be managed to gain full control over all the populations, especially the warrior class, who were very busy joining the Templars, which was a massive... I don't think people realise how huge the Templar institution was. They were recruiting stations across Europe and Blighty, and all the youth were joining it like it was a great thing, which it was at the time, because the Mohammedans were trying to kill everybody and take over. So, you know, it's not like the Crusades were just invented. I think the Mohammedans had invaded, 48 countries or 28 countries at the point at which the Western powers decided, hang on a minute, we need to sort these Johnny-come-latelys out here, which we're all going to be in the harem, and chopped our arms off. So you've got to look at this stuff in the context of the time as well. And, you know, Crusade was essential because the incursions of the Mohammedans was just ridiculous. They were taking over everything. And I think they took over 28 countries in the space of about 50 years. Now, in Scotland, as a direct result of the importation of priesthood Templars, Scotland became the root base for the priesthood on Albion. The next game was to secure the entire British Isles under the Temple of Solomon. Once cemented in Scotland, 1066 took place. England now under the Angevins at an elite level, the people had to be subdued. Hang on. So David I reigned from 1124 to 1153. David I admitted an Anglo-French-Norman aristocracy into Scotland, including the Flemings from the Low Countries, which is modern Belgium, and these groups were granted lands and positions of influence. Feudal transformation. He introduced the feudal system, reorganised landholding, and established burghs, or towns, aligning Scotland with the continental Europe. He reorganised the Scottish Church to match continental practices, founding monasteries for Cistercians and Augustinians. By pulling in aristocrats from England, Normandy, Brittany, and Flanders, David strengthened his rule and tied Scotland into the broader European aristocratic network. David I introduced feudalism, founded burghs, reformed church, brought in Anglo-Norman, Breton, and Flemish aristocrats via Flanders, Belgium. The king who pulled in the European aristocrats through Belgium was David I of Scotland. His reign transformed Scotland into... I don't know why I've even written that. I've put this together today quite quickly, so my apologies. We don't need to go through that again. And of course, David II, who came much later, was embroiled in all the wars that had been caused between these imported European bloodlines and those that were existent. This David is an important name. You've got to remember that, because as we went through the protocols, they're obsessed with this line of King David, which, of course, is Pharaoh. Right, where are we? The Flemish families brought into Scotland during David I's reign included Freskin, which was the founder of the Murray and Sutherland lines, and among others, these settlers came from Flanders, modern Belgium, and were granted lands in Moray and West Lothian, reshaping Scottish aristocracy. Flemish families settled by David I. Freskin, Flemish nobleman from Flanders, granted lands at Strathbrook, which is West Lothian, and Dufius in Moray by David I. Legacy, the progenitor of the Murray and Sutherland families, two of Scotland's most powerful dynasties. Impact, his descendants became earls and lords, anchoring Flemish influence in northern Scotland. So they killed all the Highlanders. Okay, so when we go on and see Mel Gibson on the Highlander, they weren't really Highlanders, they were this bunch of Johnny-come-latelys. They'd killed all the Highlanders. And then I've put up a few links there just to expand that data. Now, another family that he brought in was Berowald, origin, another Flemish knight who fought for David I. And settlement was rewarded with lands in Moray after suppressing a rebellion in 1130. Legacy, the ancestor of the Innes family, another prominent Scottish lineage. Now, other Flemish settlers. Many Flemings were settled in West Lothian, the Clyde Valley, and Moray. They were instrumental in introducing feudal practices, castle building, and continental aristocratic culture to Scotland. Families like the Settons or Setons and others trace their roots to this Flemish influx. And the legacy. The Murray family rose to prominence as one of Scotland's great clans, with influence in politics and war. Sutherland family became one of the most powerful northern dynasties, holding the earldom of Sutherland for centuries. Impact. Freskin's Flemish bloodline permanently reshaped Scottish nobility, embedding continental aristocracy into the fabric of the kingdom. The essence. David I's importation of Flemish nobles wasn't symbolic. It seeded entire dynasties. Freskin's descendants, the Murrays and Sutherlands, are living proof of how continental aristocracy via Flanders in Belgium became foundational to Scotland's noble structure. Excuse me. And I mean, Flanders or Belgium has always been a centre for European aristocracy. Just because they came via that doesn't mean they were all from that area. They were from all across Europe. Venetians in the main. So key families settled under David I, because there's a hell of a lot more than just those. Freskin, ancestor of the Murrays and Sutherland dynasties. Berowald of Flanders, ancestor of the Innes family. Flemings in Clydesdale and Moray settled widely, introducing castle building and feudal practices. Lindsay family, Flemish roots, later powerful in Scottish politics. Anglo-Norman families, the Bruce family, later produced King Robert the Bruce. The Stuart dynasty became the royal dynasty of Scotland, so these are Anglo-Norman. Angevin is Norman, Rollo, okay? The Comyn family, major northern magnates, rivals to the Bruces. Balliol family later produced King John Balliol. De Moravia, the Murrays, normalised branch tied to Freskin's Flemish line. So Murray is Scottish, Aggie Squeezer, Kilts, Sporrans, Aggie Shaggin. No, Moravia. It's not Scottish, is it? Breton, other continental families. Bethune family from Artois, New Flanders. Melville family, Norman origin. Seton family, possibly Flemish Norman. So before 1066 in England, they had to take over Scotland. Yeah, which was not that difficult. It's not that there weren't that many people in Scotland back then, were there, you see? The Union of the Crowns, 1603, a Scottish king walks into Westminster. Okay, so now we're into this Anon Scots data, okay. Sorry. Ooh. This fuzzy face, they're not easy to live with, I'll tell you that now. Right. Well, we'll keep in with you guys what you're doing. Oh, and Brendan O'Connell will report on it. Yeah, that's interesting. He will. Tree says it's so performative and stage. Okay. My tree is very bushy, but I have no balls. You need to get some balls, Flossie. They weren't that expensive, you know. Mew says easy, Treen. Treen Turner. Aye, me bad. Okay. Show all the main bloodlines today, says Jerry. Yes, and today there's another Highland clearance going on right now since TJ's CV script. Ooh, is there? Tell us more, Treen. Right, the Union of the Crown, 1603. A Scottish king walked into Westminster. He's not even a Scottish king, is he? He's an asswipe from Europe. An origin of a steward. So they were stewards. The Stuarts were stewards. When Queen Elizabeth I died childless in 1603, the English throne passed to James VI of Scotland, who became James VI of Scotland and James I of England. Same man, 2 crowns, 1 island. This wasn't English conquest. This was the Scottish dynasty taking over England, and James knew exactly what he was doing. Second, number 2, James declared himself King of Great Britain. England didn't. The fact is completely reversed in modern political myths. James, not the English Parliament, was the first to style himself King of Great Britain, France and Ireland, defender of the faith. He printed it on coins, he put it on proclamations, he used it in diplomacy. He pushed a vision of a single British kingdom from the moment he arrived in London. English MPs hated it. Why? Because James was trying to absorb England into a larger British monarchy under himself, not the other way around. Yeah. So at this time, obviously, the English were pretty shit and ripe for takeover. Enter the Cromwell pufter. Or the Second Temple asswipe. The Scottish takeover of English politics. For the first decade of his rule, England was effectively run by a Scottish king, Scottish favourites, a Scottish royal household, Scottish political culture. The English complained bitterly that they had become a conquered nation ruled by hungry Scots. And that's their words, he says, or she says, not mine. Many English politicians feared they were now the junior partner in a new British kingdom, dominated by Scotland's monarchy. This is the exact opposite of the modern Scottish narrative. So you can see how and why it was very easy to entice the English into supporting Cromwell, not recognising and realising, of course, that he was just a Second Temple puppet, along with the Cavendishes, or the Dukes of Marlborough, as they became, or Churchills. Yeah. The Alien Act. Myth versus reality. The Alien Act of 1705 is often portrayed as England bullying Scotland. But the act wasn't passed because England suddenly decided to punish Scotland. It was passed because Scotland's own elites rejected the Hanoverian succession, threatening political stability across the Union of Crowns and risking a rival monarchy on England's northern border. In plain terms, Scottish nobles made moves that risked breaking the shared monarchy that Scotland's king had created. England reacted out of fear that the Scottish elite would bring in a competing royal line. This is why the Alien Act targeted Scots, not because England hated Scotland, but because the Scottish ruling class had been playing power politics for a century. 5. Scottish elites built the foundations of Britishness. So when you're waving your fucking British flag, it's not fucking England. And I've noticed all these flags across the country now have been replaced. From St. George's flag to the fucking shit show, the Union Jack. Well, in so doing, you dumbasses, you're reinforcing this Aggie squeezer bunch of shitbags who have been wiping the floor with us, wiping the floor with Ireland, and wiping the floor with Scotland, then through the East India companies and the British Empire, the entire fucking globe. pulling in Muslims across the world because they work for the British Empire. If they would only know it. It's just so ridiculous. The Union Jack is more in sync with the immigrants today than it is the English. Because they've been brought in here under that empire. I wish people had awakened. It's not that difficult, really. You just have to use your own brain or your own mind. Where are you? Right. Scottish elites built the foundation of Britishness. People today talk like British identity was an English invention forced on Scotland. But James I created the blueprint. The flag, the title, the vision of the single unified island, the idea of British people, which is Covenanters, remember. Brit is covenant. This is the covenant with the Solomons. And he did this as a Scottish king, not an English one. Scotland's monarchy and nobles were co-authors of Britain. Sometimes enthusiastic, sometimes self-interested, but absolutely central. Why Scottish nationalists ignore this history? Because it breaks the simple story of Scotland equals oppressed. England the oppressor. History is messier. Scotland's monarchy reshaped England. Scottish elites helped build the British state before 1707. The Alien Act was a reaction to Scottish decisions, not English aggression. Britishness was invented by a Scotsman, not an English government. None of this weakens the independence case today, but it does demand honesty. But what it really does is show that the Scottish people, the English people, the Irish people, we are one and the same, and we have all suffered the same bastards. Albeit by us believing a falsity that each nation's elite were operating as separate entities. Solomons, Noahides, Second Temple priesthood. Conclusion. Scotland wasn't a victim, Scotland was a player. The truth is far more interesting than the myths. Scotland didn't just join Britain, Scotland created Britain, and the first man to enforce the idea was the Scottish king sitting on England's throne. Anyone debating the Alien Act or the Union without this context is debating half history. Here are Scottish primary and scholarly sources, not English, not Unionist, rewriting, but Scottish, that confirms every major point. These are the sources that shut the propaganda accusations down quickly. So, James declared himself King of Britain, Scottish source, Basilicon Doran, 1599, written by James VI in Scotland before taking the English crown. He explicitly states his desire to unite the island under a single British monarchy. To unite these two kingdoms of Scotland and England into one perfect union. Basilicon Doran, Book 3, Scottish edition, 1599. This proves the idea of Britain came from Scotland's king before he ever reached London. Another Scottish source, the Proclamation at Whitehall, 1604, issued by King James I himself, printed in Edinburgh by Robert Charteris, King's Printer for Scotland. It openly styles him as James, King of Great Britain. This is a Scottish printed document. English anger at Scottish influence seen in Scottish records. Scottish parliamentary records. The records of the Parliament of Scotland now show repeatedly complaints about the English hostility towards James' Scottish favourites. But the key takeaway, the complaints weren't that England dominated Scotland, but that the English resented Scottish dominance at court. Scottish records mention English MPs protesting Scottish presence, James appointing Scots to English positions, English fear of being treated as the junior partner, and that these aren't English sources. They are preserved in the official Scottish Parliamentary Archive. Scottish involvement in shaping Britain. John Mayer, or Major, Scottish historian, 1521. A full century before Union of Crowns, Mayer writes in Historia Majoris Britanniae that the island should be united under a single British nation led by Scotland, a Scottish scholar articulating a British identity long before England ever did. I told you it was an occupation title. Scottish role in the Alien Act crisis. Act of Security 1704, passed by the Scottish Parliament. This is the key Scottish source people ignore. It stated that if the Scottish estates didn't like England's chosen successor, Scotland should choose a different monarch. This Scottish Act threatened to break the shared monarchy, restore full separation, place a rival king on England's border, and this is what triggered the Alien Act. You don't need English sources to prove it. It's right there in Scotland's own legislation. Scottish origins of the British flag and royal style. Privy Council Register of Scotland 1603 to 1606 records James' orders relating to the title King of Great Britain, the use of the Union flag, his attempts to merge laws and customs, and again Scottish administrative records. They show James pushing British identity from Scotland before England approved anything. Scottish historians who back this interpretation. These are respected Scottish academics, not unionist propagandists. Jenny Wormald, Edinburgh, James the 6th and 1st, 2 Kings 01. Shows James' British project originated in Scotland. Roger Mason, St Andrews, Kingship and the Commonweal, proves James developed the British idea as a Scottish political concept. Alan Massini's Aberdeen, Union and Empire details the Scottish elite's active role in building Britain. Keith Brown, St Andrews, Kingdom or Province, shows Scottish nobles were power players, not victims. These scholars base their work on Scottish archives. Summary of Scottish evidence. Direct Scottish sources. Basilicon Duran, 1599. Edinburgh printed proclamations styling James as King of Great Britain. Scottish Privy Council registers. Scottish Parliamentary records. Act of Security of 1704. And John Mayer's Early British Theory in 1521. Scottish historians. Wormald, Massini's, Mason, Brown, Cowan all confirm it was the Scottish king and Scottish elites who initiated British identity, reshaped England after 1603 and triggered the political crisis that led to the Alien Act. Nothing here is English or unionist. So when you hear that idiot in Northern Ireland giving Union, what were he called? I can't remember his name. He's dead now, but that's a nut job. Yeah, they're talking about Scotland, not England. So you Northern Irish over there, you better get a grip and realise we were never your enemy. Your best mates up there in Scotland are your enemy. And look at what you've done. Is it not time we all started coming together? Our countries depend on us. It was the Scottish king and Scottish elites who initiated British identity, reshaped England after 1603. I've just done that. It's Scotland's own record of what happened. Okay, so now we move into a second piece put up. So who was the last king truly accepted by the community of the realm and why? It's obvious. But he did major cock up. When you trace Scottish kingship through the lens of the community of the realm, the answer becomes unmistakable. Scotland's medieval constitutional tradition, unique in Europe, held that the king ruled with the people, not over them. And remember, Scotland is based in the original Western Roman Church. Again, another point of evidence that the fact that the Church of Peter was never a Western Rome issue. It was, in fact, they were contrary to each other. This principle appears clearly in the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320. The 1320 to 1328 correspondence and the chroniclers who recorded the collective role of nobles, clergy, birds, and local kin-based communities. After the early medieval kings, Scotland gradually centralised, but the turning point came with the Wars of Independence, when the idea of kingship depending upon the community's consent became explicit. Kings could be rejected, kings could be replaced. The realm, not a dynasty, was sovereign, and then this is why they were killing all their own, and the Bruce did this as well. By this standard, only a few kings ever met the test fully. So I would say Bruce wasn't the king by consent of being under this system. He was implanted in order to change it. And maybe Edward I was trying to stop that. And the reason why the Bruce brought in the Solomon Templars. Yeah, we have to think of it like this, chaps. Edward was a Christian, of that there were no doubt. Them up there in Scotland weren't. By this standard, only a few kings ever met that test fully. David II struggled for legitimacy and faced long internal... So I just wanted to get a bit of an idea on the two Davids, because the two Davids are very important to these fruit bats. So, and David, of course, came a long time after, but David II struggled for legitimacy and faced long internal opposition. Robert II and III, the early Stuarts, ruled during fractious power struggles dominated by magnates. James I to James IV increasingly shifted Scotland towards authoritarian central rule, breaking with the community-based tradition. So it's the Davids that have done this, but the David II was basically left doing the warring with the nonsense that had been created through the importation of all these aristocrats from Europe under David I. James V the Mary saw royal authority become more continental, more absolutist, more divorced from the old shared sovereignty. James VI, once crowned as a child, eventually abandoned Scottish constitutionalism altogether, imposing top-down rule, destroying the autonomy of the Kirk, attacking the legal tradition, and exporting Scottish repression into Ireland. So, in effect, that does sort of question Sean Ross's idea that what is actually being demolished is the top-down system, and that was always the case in Europe. It doesn't seem to be that at all, in truth. Anyway, that's for Sean to work out. By the time James VI left Scotland in 1603, he'd broken the principle that the king must answer to the realm, not the other way around. When you look at the constitutional record, the parliamentary rolls, the correspondence, and the surviving statements of the community itself, everything points to one conclusion. The last king truly accepted by the community of the realm in the old Scottish constitutional sense was Robert the Bruce. Bruce was the final monarch whose legitimacy was explicitly granted by the community, defended by them and tied to their collective sovereignty. He was chosen, affirmed and protected by the realm, not imposed upon it. However, he did kill a lot of the clan leaders, remember. So I would suggest he accepted it only so he could change it. Every king after him either lost that consensus, ruled against it, or attempted to dismantle it. That is why, to this day, when people speak of the King of Scots, in the true constitutional meaning, not a monarch sitting over Scotland, but one who derived authority from the people, the line effectively ends with the Bruce. What followed was a drift toward dynastic, centralised and finally foreign-based monarchy, culminating in the complete severance of that ancient relationship in 1603. Considering the fact that Bruce pulled in the Solomon Templars in opposition to the English Christian Templars to fight against Edward I, the die was cast for Scotland. No longer would the method for rule come from the gospel, it would revert back to the Second Temple priesthood and act as a base. And that historical context matters. Why this matters today? This history isn't just trivia, it cuts right to Scotland's crossroads in 2025. For centuries, Scotland's legitimacy didn't come from kings, empires or foreign parliaments. It came from the community of the realm. The idea that the people themselves were the source of sovereignty and rulers only held authority with their consent. That is why the last king who was truly king of the Scots is obvious. He was recognised and bounded by the community he served, not imposed from above. Today, Scotland faces three paths. 1. Remain inside the Union, where sovereignty ultimately lies with Westminster, controlled by the Second Temple priesthood under the Scottish Church. Follow party who Big Fat Fingers oath to, remember, to uphold, while they dismantle the Church of England. 2. Follow party machines beholden to the same establishment interests, repeating the same cycle that has stalled genuine progress. Restore the foundational Scottish principle of popular sovereignty, using the Community Empowerment Act, local assemblies and modern constitutional convention to rebuild power from the ground up. Now, let's just keep this again in perspective. This move to remove the Union at present isn't anything to do with sovereignty of the peoples. It's to do specifically with the aristocracy in Scotland, which has a lot of power in America, by the way, because of the Scottish Rite, want to secure the wealth of the oil, the gas, and everything else that goes with Scotland while keeping it empty of people, because that's where all the elites live. That's the class as the homeland, when in fact it isn't. They came from the shit show called Europe. So it has to be seen in that respect. The Scottish people, the English people, the Irish people, the Welsh, even though they're still shagging sheep down there, we have a common enemy. And banking is their game. And they'll wrap that around all sorts of theologies for the believers to follow, and then they can be manipulated. This is what the People's Assembly represents. A return to the ancient Scottish constitutional principle that authority flows from the people, upward, not downward, from elites, parties or crowns. The same on England. If the Scottish Parliament is to be more than an administrative branch of the UK state, it must reclaim its original purpose. A National Assembly of Scotland, the modern expression of the community of the realm. This is not nostalgia, it is continuity. It is the constitutional logic that shaped the Declaration of Arbroath, the guardianship, the early Parliament, and every moment when Scotland defended its autonomy. And it leads to a simple truth. A free Scotland has always been the same thing, the kingdom of the Scots. England has never been a sovereign nation, and this is another piece by this non-Scot. And Scotland never surrendered its own. The history the Unionists never want you to read. Introduction. The myth that won't die. Unlike English constitutional consistency, there's a stubborn myth floating around the internet like a plastic bag in a gale. England has always been a sovereign nation, and Scotland joined it. Let's unpack that, the actual history, the recorded legal paper trail history, and show why. England has never been a sovereign nation state at any point in its history. Well, I would suggest it was a sovereign nation, so maybe that's where we're getting a bit of a difference. Scotland never gave up its sovereignty, not in 1603 and not in 1707, not ever. The United Kingdom is a treaty state, not England with extras. However, the people don't exist anymore because they don't understand what the people is. They're all persons. You've got to take that into consideration and on. It's by default of ignorance that this has taken place. So you claim there that it's never given it up. It has. In the same way the English people have given it up. Because they've given up the role of people. They are humans and persons. And are therefore governed by Admiralty law. And commerce. Anyway, I hope you see this at some point. Part 1. What even is sovereignty? Sovereignty means you're a recognised political entity with the right to make law and the right to choose or remove your head of state without anyone else's permission. But of course, he's speaking in terms of sovereignty, of political sovereignty. There's more to the meaning of sovereignty than this guy has investigated. So I accept that. Now watch how Scotland fits that definition centuries before most European states, and England doesn't fit it until after 1707. And even then, only as part of the UK, not as England. So I think I'm beginning to see now why he's coming on this game. It's because he's speaking about commercial politics rather than nations politics. So now I think I can see where he's coming a little bit unstuck there. Part 2, but it carries in the sense that the UK is a corporation. So on the one hand, I disagree, but that's his understanding of sovereignty. However, I agree in the fact that he's speaking in terms of commercial sovereignty. So I accept that now. Now I get it, and that's good. Scotland, the sovereign kingdom, could never digest. Scotland, the sovereign kingdom, England could never digest. 1320, the Declaration of Arbroath, we the people. Scotland openly asserts popular sovereignty centuries before it rose through, or even a sparkle in the Enlightenment's eye. Kings ruled because the community allowed it and could be punted if they failed. England had no equivalent document. I'm afraid it did. England's kings ruled by God said so until Parliament later overruled them, which ironically proves England wasn't sovereign either. 1603, the crowns unite. Well, I suppose I have to acknowledge that, actually. But was it not brought in under the Stuarts, the divine right? Isn't that what England were going crazy about? So perhaps it's incorrect that that was the case on England before 1603. So I'm not so sure it proves England wasn't sovereign either, okay? The Crowns unite 1603 and absolutely nothing else. James VI of Scotland didn't suddenly become king of a sovereign England. He became king of England by inheritance politics, not national sovereignty. 2 crowns, 2 laws, 2 states, 2 parliaments, 0 political union. But I'd say it's a political union claiming to be a crown union. Interesting. So, the union of the crowns, but yet it wasn't the crown being the people. So I think he's just missing it slightly. The subtlety of that. Anyway. James then demanded a perfect union. And the English Parliament basically told him, aye, and bile your heed. Awa, and bile your heed. Okay. So that's what the English said. Oh, okay. If England had been a sovereign nation state, it could have joined with Scotland unilaterally. It couldn't because it wasn't. 1689, Scotland deposes the king. Scotland chucks out James VII in the claim of right, proving once again that sovereignty lies with the Scottish people. But was it the people or was it the aristocracy? I get his drift, but I think he's just missing the subtleties of how power actually works here, he or she, anyway. Sovereign nations don't need permission to remove a monarch. Subordinate colonies do. Scotland used the big boy constitutional tools. England threw a tantrum, changed its monarch, and pretended it was the same thing. Well, actually, England didn't. The Venetians did it. Or the purveyors of the East India Companies, which were seated in Scotland. Hey, dear. Subtlety, eh? No surrender. Scotland never gave up sovereignty in 1707. Now for the big myth. Scotland gave up sovereignty in 1707 Union. No. Read the treaty. Seriously, the things online explicitly creates a new state where Scotland keeps Scots law, Scots courts, Scottish education, Scottish local government, Scottish church, Scottish national identity. This is not what surrender looks like. But look at what happened to Scotland. You did surrender by force. This is what they kept for themselves. The elites. This is not what surrender looks like. This is what treaty partnership looks like. Article 1 creates Great Britain. Articles 18 and 29 guarantee Scotland's independent legal order. You don't retain sovereign powers if you surrendered them. I get it now where he's coming from. He's missing the big picture, which it doesn't matter. This is a Scot pulling it out right, but there's more to be known, my friend. England, the place that keeps swearing it's a country. And we're a nation. Here's the historical gut punch you need to say it the most. England has never at any point been recognised in international law as a sovereign nation state. Well, how long has international law been going on, young man? International law has not been going that long. So again, you're missing a big chunk of the puzzle. Not once, he says. Maybe so after international law, because it was the UK. But you are just pushing it slightly there in you believing that then means that England was never a nation. Well, you've said it yourself, country. Country is not a nation, and you've got to understand that as well. Before 1707, England was a monarchy, not a nation state. Yeah, it was a constitutional monarchy, my good man. It was a collection of feudal jurisdictions with a central monarch, but no concept of national sovereignty. I don't know where you get that from, lad. After 1707, England ceased to exist legally. I would agree with that. The UK became the sovereign entity. I would also accept that. Modern day, ask any lawyer. I think he forgets as well that the monarchy was banned by Parliament. The office of monarch. I only brought Charles II in as a Johnny come lately because everybody were having a fit. Because you lose your monarch, you've no crown, which is the people. So, I would suggest AI has played a little blinder here because he's failed to just push certain little points in there, and AI is coming up with this. Because if there's one thing I've learned about AI, it will not give you more than you've asked. You have to be specific. So when anyway, we'll not get into that, but AI is, you have to be extremely careful with the AI if you're going to act on its verbatim, because you could be into a lot of trouble. But if you understand that, then carry on working with AI, but just always make sure you're covering every point, because it won't pull it in otherwise. All right? Remember, the AI is working on what's available and the filters are there before it responds. Modern day, ask any lawyer. England cannot sign treaties. No, it can't. UK. England cannot declare war. No. England cannot join international organisations. England cannot act as a sovereign state because England isn't one. No, not in the corporate shit show. You're quite right. So in the banking shit show, it's the UK. Only the UK, but can Scotland? I would say not, because you're part of the UK. So in the same way that we all dream of England and have realised that England isn't being operated out there in law, and we acknowledge and accept that that's the case, I think this guy just needs to recognise that Scotland is in the same position. Scotland isn't being enforced either. Scotland is under the same web of the UK, you know? Never was. Only the UK is a sovereign state. Even the House of Lords Library confirms this. Well, yeah, today, but you said it's never. So that's AI, that. Part 5. James the Sixth invited. I write, he took it. Unionists love saying, and this is, you see, you've got to remember, this is all on the back of the Tudors. Once the Tudors were on the throne, the House Palavicini controlled the British throne through the House Stanley, the kingmakers. It's essential that people realise that from the advent of the Tudors, the Holy See Venetian banking dynasties completely controlled England. And that is so important, because when you grasp that, if you're aware of history, it's like a key. It changes the whole paradigm of your understanding of the history of England. It's so important. I know I'm way ahead of the fucking game. I know it's going to take time for people to catch up on this stuff. I understand that. This has happened to me many times before. I'm way ahead, and it takes time for people to catch up. But do you know what? They do catch up. And do you know what else? It's just as though it's always been out there in La La Land. Everybody just accepts it, and that's the way it is. And nobody cares how it came in, because everybody just agrees it's always been there, because that's what they now see. I like that. It's good. It's called working from the back, and I like that. England, yeah, pure fantasy. Pure fantasy. Elizabeth I died childless. Yes. And who was running the show in England? Palavicini. Who were all these Scottish aristocrats brought in under David I? Aristocrats under the Holy See. Banking dynasties. Clever, these bastards. The English political class needed a Protestant with Tudor blood. James was literally the only viable option who wouldn't trigger a civil war. Ha ha ha, but his son did. He leveraged that to push for a single merged state under his control, and he failed. Parliament told him no. Public opinion told him no. The courts told him, nay, you can't do it, you haggard-squeezing twat, they said. He ended up ruling two sovereign states separately, because that's what they were. Invited. I don't think so. He had the strongest hereditary claim, and England had no alternatives. That's not an invitation, that's inevitability. That's the work of the Stanleys, getting rid of the Plantagenets. Clever. But then what were left of the Plantagenets? The immortal 6 or 7. They went for William. Anyway, modern courts still recognise Scottish sovereignty. The UK Supreme Court 2011. The principle of the sovereignty of the people of Scotland is woven into constitutional fabric. How embarrassing for the England is sovereign crowd. Scotland retains a distinct constitutional tradition. England doesn't have one. It's a collection of political habits. I don't know where you're getting this from, fella. Unionist myths obliterated. England continues. Scotland was absorbed. Wrong. That's true. 1707 treaty creates a new state. Myth 2. England was a sovereign nation before Scotland. Wrong. Scotland's a very old nation. I do accept that. England was a kingdom, not a state. No concept of popular sovereignty. No nationhood, no constitution. Myth 3, Scotland surrendered sovereignty in 1707. Wrong. You see, Scotland was still a nation, and the Romans couldn't take it over. That's why they built Hadrian's Wall. But of course they did here. But this wasn't the normal Romans, the Western Romans. This were the Carthaginian dictators wrecking the origin of the theology that was given to Yeshua and then preached in Levant. They had to destroy the source of it. It was born here, it was sent to the Levant, and it came back here through Mary Magdalene and her offspring, again Joseph of Arimathea. The Carthaginians, getting power in Rome, had to come here and destroy it. That's what was going on under Rome. So all these ideas of Roman roads, it's just nonsense. These roads have been here forever. The Romans, however, did put their own surfaces upon them. But everything that's given to Rome when civilization is being declared on Albion as an archaeological find is a nonsense. It really is. And that's what Wilson and Blackett, in essence, were trying to get across. So I'm going to just bypass some of this, because it's just going on a bit more of the other. So I want to get, and there's some footnotes to what he's presenting. So I agree, it wasn't a nation after 1649, I would suggest, or even indeed 1603, although it took a civil war for them to achieve what it was they were intending to do. Westminster's quiet panic. England needs Scotland to legitimise its own existence. Now, I don't even want to go through that, because what I want to go through is get back to these bloodlines. Because he's going through basically what he's trying to just support what he said. And here he's stating that England was never a sovereign nation. It was a patchwork of empires made by force. Before any England existed, the land was a mass of competing Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. And he cites Mercia, Wessex, Northumbria, East Anglia, Kent, Sussex, Essex and more. They weren't English nations. These were Germanic warlord states carved into Celtic Britain. One dynasty, Wessex, forced them together by conquest. The people never once exercised national self-determination. Now, I've added, as a note, taking on board the work of Wilson and Blackett, the idealing was a group of Saxon kingdoms has not been proven. And archaeology on England that they've been doing forever disproves that fact. Very rarely they can find a Saxon settlement. It's always Danish. It's always what you'd class as Celtic, the Britons. But it hasn't been proven, and removes the fact, as presented by Wilson and Blackett, that the Trojans had a major stake on these isles. That these isles were a big part of whatever the Trojan civilization was, demolished by the Hyksos as they were thrown out of Egypt. and became what we call the Greeks. Not the Athenians, the original. Okay, or Plato and even Socrates. They were Athenians. Different kettle of fish. And remember, when the pharaohs were kicking out the Hyksos, they went everywhere. They were thrust out. They were Crete. They went on took over Greece, and called themselves Greeks. Then they attacked Troy. We've even looked at the fact: is Alexander the Great, was he ever a Greek? No, I'd say he was the Babylonian priesthood, thrust out of Egypt, regrouped a power base, and Babylon took over everywhere. And this idea that Alexander was a Greek and therefore part of the Western civilization is a fantasy. But that's just my opinion in my studies of history. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The Danes conquered England, full stop, he says, which is quite correct. Danelaw covered half the country. Danish kings ruled the entire country. Danish law prevailed. England wasn't sovereign. It was colonised. Well, we agree with that. Now, I'm not even going to go with that again, Ian. We're just going to... We'll go past that. But you can read this. Obviously, I'll put this link up after. It's an interesting read, but I just want to make sure we go back to these bloodlines, because you'll be surprised just at what families were brought in under David the First that everybody believes is Scottish. So there's quite a few sources there to that piece. There we go. Right. The persistence of elite families in Scotland demonstrates how aristocratic, mercantile and financial power has evolved across centuries. Rather than a handful of castles or romanticised tartan names, this network encompasses dynasties whose wealth derived from landholding, colonial exploitation, industrialisation and modern finance. The following outline identifies major categories of families and their historical roles. Okay. Aristocratic dynasties. These families anchored land ownership and political influence from the medieval period into the modern era. The Hamiltons, the Dukes of Hamilton and Brandon, extensive estates in South Lanarkshire and Arran, political and military prominence, links to Caribbean plantation wealth, slavers. Buccleuch, Scots Dukes of Buccleuch and Queensberry, Scotland's largest private landowners, coal, wealth and rents, royal connections, involvement in colonial trade. That's East India. Campbells, Dukes of Argyll, power brokers in Scottish politics for over 4 centuries, benefited from imperial office posts. Highland estates remain significant. Sutherland's, Dukes of Sutherland, notorious for the Highland clearances, wealth tied to mining and colonial finance. Gordon's, Dukes of Gordon, military command dynasties, raised island regiments for the British Army. Murray's, Dukes of Atholl, owned Jamaican plantations, continued to hold island estates and forests. That's slavers. Graham's, Dukes of Montrose, early colonial involvement, parliamentary and court positions across centuries. Plantation and colonial wealth. Scottish elite families' properties directly from slavery and colonial administration, as documented in compensation records following abolition, which England banned. Wedderburn's, Jamaican plantations, compensation payments recorded in the Legacies of British Slave Ownership database. Cummings, plantation owners in Guyana and Trinidad. Oswald's, Glasgow tobacco lords, fortunes built on slavery-linked trade. Spears of Elderslie, West India merchants, sugar trafficking. Well, Jews monopolised sugar. I have a piece on that. Dunlops and Houstons, Ayrshire families tied to slave economy. Sterlings of Keir, Douglas Hamilton Sterlings, major Caribbean plantation wealth, political and financial influence. Merchants and industrial dynasties, 18th to 20th century. Glasgow's rise as the second city of the empire was driven by merchant and industrial families. Dennis Stones, merchants and bankers with colonial trade links. Baird's, steel, coal and shipping magnates financed industrial infrastructure. Napier's, engineering dynasty producing weapons and machinery. Holdsworth's, textile industrialist parliamentary involvement, Coates family or Paisley, thread empire. Yeah, that's him, Paisley, over in Northern Ireland. Among Scotland's richest families. Weirs, industrialists turned financiers. Clyde shipping dynasties, Burns, Allen Line and Donaldson's, merchant shipping tied to imperial trade. Financial and professional elites. Continuity from land and trade into modern finance is evident in these dynasties. Fleming family. Robert Fleming founded a merchant bank linking Dundee and London capital flows. Patterson's, legal and commercial dynasty tied to Edinburgh institutions. Heriots, Dundasses, Melvilles, judges, bankers and colonial administrators. Dalrymples, Earls of Stir, legal dynasty with colonial governance roles. Families quietly powerful today. Modern dynasties continued the pattern of wealth and influence. Western family, global retail dynasty with Scottish origins. Grant Gordon's, the Glenfiddich, whiskey wealth and global distribution. Mackay's, Menzies aviation and retail, international logistics and property. McFarlane's, investment and finance across Edinburgh and London. Conclusion. Scotland elite is best understood as a resilient ecosystem. These families survived the Union, thrived in the Empire, reinvested during industrialisation and today dominate finance, land ownership and cultural institutions. The continuity of power across centuries underscores the importance of mapping not only aristocratic dynasties, but also mercantile, industrial and financial elites. How many of Scotland's pre-Union elite lineage actually survive today, and how many ever genuinely oppose the political union of 1707? Here's the blunt, historically grounded, slightly scathing answer. How many survive? Roughly 30 to 40 major aristocratic families from pre-1707 Scotland still exist, depending on how you classify survival. Continuous male line peerage titles still active, estates intact, or simply the lineage continuing. To give you a sense of scale, pre-1707 Scotland had around 150 to 200 peerage titles. Just look at how small these people are in comparison to the populations and the power they wield. After the post-Culloden forfeitures, estate breakups and 19th and 20th century death duties, the number of surviving landed families drops sharply. But by today, only around 30% of the old peerage lines still hold land titles or institutional power. These include Hamilton, Douglas, Gordon, Campbell, Murray, Lennox, Montgomery, Boyd, Kennedy, Buccleuch or Scott, Errol, Sutherland, Roxburgh, Elphinstone, Orley or Ogilvy, Dalhousie or Ramsey, Roths or Leslie, Werness, Glencairn, Cunningham, Melvin, Leslie Melvin, Haddington or Hamilton, Buchan, Erskine, Glasgow, Boyle, Panmure Line, Mole, partially restored, Forbes, Grant, Fraser, McLean, MacLeod, MacDonald of Sleat, and a handful of others. Counting cadet branches, more like 60 or 70 families traceable, but not still all wealthy. How many were ever against the Union? Brace yourself, because this bit causes trouble in modern independent circles. Very few major aristocratic families oppose the Union, and not for patriotism. The breakdown is roughly opposed for financial leverage or faction politics, not national principle. Hamilton's Duke, but only because they wanted better terms for themselves. The Athol Murrays, though they switched sides 3 times. The Jacobite clan nobles, the MacDonald, Cameron, Maclean, Fraser, some branches, Mackenzie, etc. The Lockharts, Belhaven, and a handful of lowland dissenters genuinely opposed it, but these were ideological outliers, not the establishment families. Total, maybe 10 or 15 families outright opposed the political union as a matter of principle, neutral or divided internally. Many clans and houses were split down the middle. Some supported financially but opposed militarily. Some sent one son to each side to hedge the bets. Total 20 to 30 families in the grey zone. Supported or quietly accepted, the majority: Campbells, Gordons, Boyles, Dalhousie's, Earleys, Douglases, Errol, Maitlands or Lauderdale, Montrose Grahams, Drummonds, Lennox Stewarts, almost every lowland mercantile dynasty. These group backed the Union not because they loved England, but because they expected access to English colonial markets. They were heavily invested in the equivalent. They expected London posts, military commissions and sinecures. They were broke from the Darien disaster and needed the bailout. They feared internal instability more than London dominance. Total: 60 to 80% of elite families supported the Union directly or indirectly. Crucial points: the ones who survived are the ones who backed the winning constitutional order. The families that adapted to London, entered imperial administration, joined the East India Company, took British Army commissions, married into English wealth, shifted to imperial finance and railways, embraced the post-Union aristocratic model, are the ones still in power today. The ones who fought for Jacobitism, defied London militarily, rebelled over taxation, backed the Stuarts, resisted centralisation, were crushed, forfeited, bankrupted or erased. Survival wasn't an accident, it was political alignment. So how many surviving families were ever anti-Union? If we mean still existing lines, 5 to 8 families survived and historically opposed the Union, and most of these only opposed it briefly or tactically. If we mean large, wealthy, continuous aristocratic houses that only opposed the Union and remain influential today, almost none. The surviving elites are overwhelmingly the ones who aligned with or benefited from the Parliamentary Union, the British Empire, the East India Company, landed reforms, Victorian consolidation, 20th century finance capitalism. It's the same pattern from Skye to Kelburn House. And that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Scotland's aristocratic survivors are not symbols of resistance. They are the families who played the British state better than anyone else. So I'll leave that because I just want to go right again to these families that I added today. So again, what are we doing here? So that, yeah, it goes through some families there. I can't remember which parts I've made. But it just gives you... Where did it? It has turned into quite a long... So look, you've got all these... All the records are there. Everything's cited. But I just want to... Because we're plumbing out. It took me longer than I thought, to be fair. But if I can just get to what I put up earlier today, the last thing I did before the live stream, just to give you another idea of what families actually came in from Europe and in essence are not. Oh, I've gone through them. I've actually gone past it would look like. But it's an exceptionally interesting read, and especially when you start to realise just what families that are claimed to be Scottish as ancestry are not really. They were an invading force set up by the Second Temple families, who we would class as the Holy See families. And there we have that. So I can see Treen's got excited there. Yeah, they had to wipe out the Gaelic language. It doesn't secure the right frame of mind in your offspring. In the same manner they had to wipe out the Native American language. It doesn't program the dark side to the child or to the offspring if you speak to them in the right way. Flipping heck, Treen, you've got a lot to say there, girl, and I like that. That's good. I'm a bad lay. Oh, you naughty boy, Anthony. So Sean, as always, I tip my hat. I have friends, otherwise you can know where he's, Anthony. Welcome. Tommy Robinson, boy, says John. I'll just quick whip through to see if there's... I don't want to go through yours, team, because I already know a lot of what you're saying. But well done for putting it out there. Where are we? Pedram says, Treen, what's up at Orkney? I had signed a contract to do 3 years rural GP tenure at Orkney, but London's Pakistani Freemasons at GMC blocked it. It happened in 2019. Orkney, is there a real Pakistani billionaire who bought the land, property of Jimmy Savile in Moray, planning permission to build a relaxation retreat there? I mean, it used to be the seat of the Danish Viking power, didn't it? In Shetland. Interesting. I mean, yeah, they're definitely getting rid of the Scandinavian ideology. But, of course, if you look at the English today, what are they doing? We're all going back to the Viking tattooed. Everybody's tattooed up to death. That's an ancestral genetic memory. We know what's coming. And I'll tell you now, I wouldn't want to fight a white race. I don't care who they were. I don't care who they think they are, how clever they think they are. I would not want to fight a white race on their own turf. I'll tell you now. So I don't see if people don't wise up to the fact that they're fully controlled because they believe shit and not know shit, but then claim to know shit because they don't want to accept that they believe shit. It's going to be a very interesting future, I have to say. But I'm always ready for anything, so I don't really give two shits. In all truth, what'll be will be. I just feel sorry for these young'uns, because they don't know any different, unfortunately. John says, they wanted to wipe out the Gaelic language. Yeah, they did, yeah, everywhere. And the Native American, yeah. Pedram says, I might sail to Orkney. Okay, well done for that. Anthony says, are you about Friday show for a coffee? Friday I am, my good man. I'm seeing you tomorrow, so if you want to arrange a Friday's perfect, actually, yeah. Absolutely perfect, that. So, yes, I'm up for that, Anthony. I would look forward to that, my good man, indeed. And we can discuss some interesting data that you need to know. All right? Chaps, as always, thanks for joining. Everybody, thanks for taking part. Mods, thanks for modding. And as we head up to the Christmas season, it's getting good. And we'll wish you a happy week. We'll see you again on Sunday, and we will talk again on Sunday as to whether we're going to do a Christmas Eve live, because I do have some interesting data, although I haven't picked it out yet, but I know what I want to do, and it will be quite revealing in relation to how the Second Temple has taken over Christmas quite some time ago, and people really just don't know. But Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer will mean something completely different, I'll tell thee. Thanks, chaps. As always, I would say have a good week. Till the next time.
Electronic